My name is Isabella. I'm 30 years old, and my mom just uninvited me from the family Christmas I paid for. She thought she was picking her golden child over me, but she forgot one very important detail. I own the house. I wiped a streak of sweat from my forehead, leaving a faint smudge of truffle dust behind. My downtown Chicago condo didn't look like a home right then. It looked like a high-end logistics center during peak season. By the door sat 4 massive, insulated cooler boxes, sealed tight with silver industrial tape. Inside those boxes wasn't just food, it was the Christmas experience. I'm talking about a prime rib roast that cost more than my monthly car payment 5 years ago. I'm talking about artisanal cheeses imported from France that smelled like dirty socks in the best possible way, handmade chocolates, and enough high-end champagne to drown a small yacht. This was my role. I was the practical daughter, the one who moved away, got the boring corporate job in project management, and quietly paid for things. My mother, Eleanor, cared deeply about appearances. She wanted the Hallmark movie Christmas, the roaring fire, the gourmet spread, the perfect photos. But she didn't want the hassle of actually creating it. That fell to me. If I didn't bring the magic, Mom would likely order pizza and complain about the delivery fee, while my younger sister, Chloe, posed with an empty stocking for Instagram. My phone buzzed on the granite countertop. It was a reminder for my flight tomorrow morning into Aspen. I surveyed my work with a tired sense of satisfaction. $2,000 in groceries, packed and ready for the freight shipper. My own suitcase was neatly packed with practical sweaters and snow gear by the door. Outside my floor-to-ceiling windows, snow was starting to swirl against the glass, blurring the city lights. It was cold here, but I was thinking about the Colorado cabin, our Colorado cabin. The smell of the old pine wood, the sharp mountain air. It was the one place where I almost felt like we were a normal family. I had spent the last month organizing everything, the heating fuel delivery, the plowing service for the long driveway, even hiring a local cleaning crew to dust off the cobwebs before Mom and Chloe arrived yesterday. "Okay, Isabella," I whispered to myself, slapping another piece of tape onto the final box. "One more year of buying their love. Let's hope it works." I was exhausted. My bank account was significantly lighter, but I was ready to go home. The vibration of my phone against the granite sounded like a jackhammer in the quiet of my condo. I didn't even need to look at the screen to know it was Mom. She always called around 8 p.m. to check if the logistics were on track. "Hey, Mom," I said, tucking the phone between my shoulder and ear as I reached for a glass of water. "The cooler boxes are all packed. The freight company is picking them up at dawn. I should be landing in Aspen by noon." There was a pause. A long, heavy silence that made the hair on my arms stand up. Usually, Mom was already rattling off a list of things she forgot to buy. Napkins, special candles, or some specific brand of sparkling water. "Isabella, honey," she finally said. Her voice had that specific, airy quality she used when she was about to say something incredibly selfish, but wanted it to sound like a favor. "About that, I think it's better if you don't come this year." I froze, the water glass halfway to my lips. "What? Mom, the flight is booked. The car is rented. I've spent $2,000 on the food alone. Is someone sick?" No, everyone is wonderful," she chirped, and I could hear the clink of a wine glass in the background. She was already at the cabin. "It's just Chloe's new boyfriend, Jasper, is here, Isabella. Very private. He told us he's planning something life-changing for Chloe on Christmas Eve, and he wants it to be an intimate, immediate family experience." "I am immediate family," I said, my voice sounding small even to my own ears. "Of course you are, dear, but you know how you can be. You're so practical. You ask so many questions about people's backgrounds and work. Jasper is a bit sensitive. He's a visionary. We just don't want any big sister energy ruining the vibe. We're not celebrating Christmas with you this year. It's for the best." The air in my apartment suddenly felt thin. I looked down at the 4 massive cooler boxes, the prime rib, the champagne, the chocolates. They felt like a joke now, a punchline to a story about a girl who tried too hard. Mom, I paid for the plowing. I paid for the cleaning crew. I'm literally the one providing the meal you're going to eat. And we appreciate that, truly, she said, though she sounded bored. Just give the food to a shelter or something. You're so good at that charity stuff. We'll call you on the 26th, okay? Jasper says he needs the energy in the house to be perfectly aligned. Bye, honey. The line went dead. I stood there in the middle of my apartment, surrounded by silver-taped boxes and the faint scent of imported truffles, listening to the wind howl against my window. 5 minutes ago, I was the provider. Now I was a vibe killer who had been uninvited from my own traditions. I looked at the phone in my hand. My thumb hovered over the group chat. My heart was pounding, a mix of hot shame and cold, rising liquid anger. They wanted a private experience? Fine. But they had forgotten one very important, very practical detail.
The silence in my condo was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic thump-thump of the wind battering the glass. I sat down on one of the cooler boxes, the cold from the ice packs seeping through the cardboard and into my jeans. It was a grounding sensation. It helped the red mist of anger clear just enough for me to think. Big sister energy, I muttered, my voice cracking. Visionary, energy alignment. I looked at my hands. They were calloused slightly at the tips from years of DIY projects I'd done at the cabin myself, fixing the porch railing, staining the deck, insulating the windows, because Mom and Chloe couldn't be bothered. I stood up and walked to my home office. In the bottom drawer of my oak desk sat a fireproof lockbox. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside, but I did anyway. I pulled out a thick manila folder labeled Pine Ridge Property. When Dad died 3 years ago, he hadn't left the cabin to Mom. He knew her. He knew she viewed the cabin as a stage for her social life, but never as a responsibility. He'd seen how Chloe treated money like confetti. He had sat me down, his hands shaking from the Parkinson's, and told me, "Isabella, you're the anchor. Keep the house in the family, or it'll be gone in a year." I looked at the deed. My name was the only one on it. I paid the property taxes. I paid the $800 a month homeowner's insurance. I paid the smart home subscription that kept the security cameras and the Nest thermostat running. In their minds, it was the family cabin. In reality, they were guests in my house. A slow, cold realization washed over me. Mom hadn't just uninvited me from a holiday, she had uninvited me from my own house, so my sister's fraud of a boyfriend could play king of the castle. I looked at the clock. It was 8:15 p.m. I pulled my laptop onto my lap and logged into the Colorado Mountain Power portal. Then I opened the app for the cabin's smart lock and HVAC system. My fingers didn't tremble. I felt a strange, icy calm. If I was a vibe killer, it was time to show them exactly how much vibe I actually provided. I began to type. First, I canceled the freight pickup for the food. I wasn't sending a single ounce of that prime rib to people who didn't want light company. Then I looked at the temperature control for the cabin. It was currently a cozy 72 degrees. Outside, the Colorado weather app showed a blizzard warning with temperatures dropping to 5 below zero. "You want a private experience, Mom?" I whispered to the empty room. "You've got it." I opened the family group chat. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to beg. I wanted to be exactly what she called me, practical. I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, the blue light washing over the floor of my dark apartment.
It was funny how power felt in the 21st century. It wasn't a scepter or a crown. It was a series of sliding toggles on a user interface. First, I accessed the Nest account. I saw the current status of the cabin. It was a balmy 72 degrees inside. I could see the history. Someone, likely Chloe, had been cranking it up to 75 every few hours. I clicked the eco mode button, then I went a step further. I set the target temperature to 45 degrees, just enough to keep the pipes from bursting, but low enough that you'd see your breath in the living room within the hour. Next, I opened the August Smart Lock app. I saw the logs. Front door unlocked, 7:42 p.m. That was probably Jasper coming in with more wood for a fire he likely didn't know how to build. I waited until the log showed front door locked. Then I did it. I revoked all guest access codes. My mother's code, which she'd used for 3 years, blinked once and then vanished from the active list. If they stepped outside to look at the stars or check the mail, they were staying outside. My heart was thumping against my ribs now, a frantic, wild rhythm. I felt like a saboteur, but a small, persistent voice in my head, the voice that sounded like my father, said, "They took the seat at your table and told you to leave the room, Isabella. You're just taking your table back." Finally, I opened the catering app. I had prepaid for a local chef in the valley to drop off a hot, multi-course meal on Christmas Eve. It was a $600 deposit. I hit cancel order. My phone pinged instantly with a refund confirmation. It was time. I opened the family group chat. The last message was from Chloe, a photo of a $400 bottle of wine I'd sent ahead with the caption, "Starting the festivities early. Wish you were here, but Jasper needs his space. LOL, champagne." My fingers hovered over the glass screen. I typed the words carefully, my breath hitching. "I understand," I wrote. "Since I'm not part of the family this year, I've decided to move in a different direction with my investments. I've deactivated my accounts for the cabin. Since you want a private experience without me, it only makes sense that you provide your own resources. Merry Christmas." I hit send. The little gray check mark turned blue, red. I set the phone face down on the counter. I walked over to the window and watched the Chicago snow fall. I counted the seconds. I didn't even get to 60. My phone didn't just buzz, it exploded. Notification after notification lit up the room like a strobe light. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. At the 5-minute mark, the phone began to wail with a direct call. The caller ID showed a picture of my mother, smiling in front of a Christmas tree. I picked up the phone, my voice as cool as the wind outside. "Hello, Mom. Is something wrong with the vibe?" The screaming started before I even got the phone to my ear. I didn't even have to put it on speaker. My mother's voice was so shrill it vibrated through the casing of the phone. "Isabella, what is going on?" she shrieked. In the background, I could hear the distinct, rhythmic clack, clack, clack of a high-end igniter on a gas stove failing to catch. "The heat just died. It's dropping into the 60s already, and Jasper says the smart lock on the mudroom door just clicked shut on its own. He was just going out to get more wood." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my ice water. The cold liquid felt sharp against my throat. "I told you, Mom, I've moved in a different direction with my investments. Since I'm a vibe killer, I figured I'd remove my energy from the house entirely." "This isn't funny," Mom yelled. I heard Chloe's voice in the distance, sounding frantic. "Mom, the catering company just called. They said the order was canceled by the owner. Tell her to fix it." "Isabella, did you hear your sister?" Mom's voice dropped into a desperate, commanding tone. "Call them back right now. Jasper is a very important man, and he is expecting a 5-course meal. He's already annoyed that the house is getting chilly. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "Actually, Mom, I think I do," I said, my voice steady. It's about as embarrassing as being told you're not family enough to attend a dinner you paid for, or being told your energy isn't right for a house you own. There was a sudden, sharp intake of breath on the other end. The realization was finally sinking in. My mother isn't stupid, she just chooses to ignore things that don't suit her. "What do you mean, a house you own?" she whispered. "Dad left the cabin to me, Mom. I've been paying the taxes, the insurance, the utilities, and the maintenance for 3 years. You've been living there as my guest, and today you uninvited the host." "Isabella, honey," she said, her voice instantly shifting into that manipulative, honey-sweet tone that used to work on me every time. "We were just caught up in the excitement. Jasper is going to propose. We just wanted it to be perfect. You know how sisters can be. Don't be like this. Just turn the heat back on and send the food, and we can talk about this like adults." I am being an adult. An adult makes choices. You chose Jasper's private experience. I'm just giving it to you. A private, quiet, very cold experience. I've already contacted the local sheriff's department to let them know the property is being vacated for the season. If the alarm goes off because someone tries to force a door, well, that's out of my hands. "You wouldn't," she gasped. "I already did. Merry Christmas, Mom." I hung up. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might faint, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the boring sister. I felt like the one in charge of the story. I poured myself a glass of that expensive champagne I'd intended for the cabin. The cork popped with a satisfying, expensive thud, and the bubbles hissed against the crystal. I sat back on my velvet sofa, the only light in the room coming from the fireplace and the glow of my iPad. I opened the security camera feed for the cabin. It felt a little voyeuristic, a little like watching a slow-motion train wreck, but I couldn't look away. The great room of the cabin, with its vaulted cedar ceilings and massive stone fireplace, looked like a tomb. Through the night vision lens, I could see them. My mother was wrapped in a heavy wool rug she'd stripped off the back of the sofa, pacing back and forth. Chloe was huddled in a corner, wearing her designer faux fur coat, her face buried in her phone. And then there was Jasper, the visionary. He didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like a man throwing a silent, simmering tantrum. He was wearing a thin, trendy turtleneck that offered zero protection against the Colorado winter. He was hovering by the thermostat, hitting the buttons with enough force to crack the casing. He didn't know I'd locked the interface from my phone in Chicago. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Chloe. "Isabella, stop. Jasper is furious. He says he's never been treated like this. He's talking about leaving. You're ruining my life. Just turn the heat on and we'll forget you were such a bee." I didn't reply. I watched the screen. Jasper was gesturing wildly now, pointing at his watch and then at the door. I could almost hear him through the camera's muffled microphone, complaining about the service, the lack of preparation, the unprofessionalism of it all. Wait, unprofessionalism? I zoomed in. He wasn't acting like a boyfriend who was worried about his girlfriend's comfort. He was acting like a client who hadn't gotten what he'd paid for. That's when I saw it. He picked up his leather briefcase, the one Chloe had bragged about being bespoke, and headed for the door. Mom tried to grab his arm, likely begging him to stay, but he shook him off. He stepped out onto the porch, and I saw his breath explode in a thick cloud of white vapor. The mudroom door clicked shut behind him.
lock. He tried the handle, then he turned around and hammered on the wood. He was locked out in 5 below zero weather with no car keys, since I'd canceled the private car service that was supposed to be waiting in the garage. I took a sip of the champagne. It was crisp, cold, and tasted like justice. For years, I had been the silent scaffolding holding up their beautiful lives. I was the one who checked the fine print, paid the bills, and ensured the vibe was perfect. They thought the magic just happened. They thought the heat stayed on because they were special, not because I paid the bill on the 15th of every month. The phone rang again. This time it wasn't Mom. It was a number I didn't recognize with a local Colorado area code. "Hello?" I answered. "Is this Isabella? This is Jasper. Your mother gave me this number. Look, there's been a mistake. I'm locked out, it's freezing, and I have a very important meeting in Denver tomorrow. You need to unlock this house and call me a car now." I leaned back, watching him on the screen as he paced the porch like a caged animal. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "Who did you say this was? I don't celebrate Christmas with strangers."
"Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" Jasper's voice crackled over the line, thin and vibrating with rage. On my iPad screen, I watched him kick a drift of snow off his expensive loafers. "I have assets under management that could buy this entire mountain. I don't have time for your little family tantrum. Open the door." "If you're so wealthy, Jasper," I said, swirling the champagne in my glass, "I'm sure you can afford a night at the St. Regis in Aspen. Oh wait, that's a 40-mile drive and you don't have a car. And since I canceled the private driver I'd arranged for my family, I guess you're stuck with the local taxi service, if they're even running in a blizzard." "Isabella!" My mother's voice suddenly broke through the line. She must have been standing right behind the locked mudroom door, shouting so Jasper's phone would pick it up. "Stop this! He's going to leave Chloe! He's saying this energy is toxic. You're ruining her engagement." "Mom, if his love for Chloe is dependent on the thermostat being set to 72 degrees, it wasn't much of a romance to begin with," I replied. Through the camera, I saw Jasper stop pacing. He looked at the heavy oak door, then at the dark, snow-choked woods surrounding the cabin. He wasn't a visionary. He was a predator who had found a family he thought he could leech off of, and he'd just realized the well had run dry. "I'm done," Jasper spat into the phone. He wasn't talking to me anymore. He was talking to the door. "Chloe, I'm not staying in a frozen shack with a bunch of losers who can't even keep the lights on. Call me when you grow up." He turned on his heel and began tromping down the unplowed driveway, his designer briefcase swinging wildly. He looked like exactly what he was, a fraud in a thin sweater. "Jasper, no!" Chloe's scream was muffled, but I heard it. I watched the screen as my sister's face appeared at the small window in the mudroom door. She was crying, her mascara streaking down her cheeks, watching her billionaire disappearing into the whiteout conditions of the storm. The silence that followed on the phone was deafening. My mother wasn't screaming anymore. I could hear her faint, ragged breathing. "He's gone. He's actually gone. He just left us here in the dark." "He didn't leave you in the dark, Mom," I said softly. "I left the porch lights on for him so he could find the road, and I left the eco heat on for you so the house stays at 45. You wanted a private Christmas. Now you have one. You, Chloe, and the consequences of your own vibe." "What do we do?" Chloe's voice came through now, small and stripped of all its usual bite. "Isabella, it's so cold in here. Please." I looked at the 4 cooler boxes in my kitchen, the prime rib, the chocolates, the warmth I had prepared with so much love, only to be told it wasn't wanted. "There's a stack of emergency blankets in the hall closet, and there are plenty of cans of soup in the pantry. You'll be fine until morning.
I'll have the property manager come by at 10 a.m. to escort you out and secure the property for the winter. I've already booked you a room at the local motel in town. I paid for one night. After that, you're on your own." "The motel?" Mom gasped. "The one by the interstate?" "It's warm, Mom. And more importantly, it's exactly what I'm willing to provide. No more, no less." I hung up before they could say another word. I walked over to the windows of my condo and looked out at the Chicago skyline.
Christmas morning dawned in Chicago with a silence so profound it felt like a gift. I woke up without the usual jolt of adrenaline, without the frantic mental checklist of oven temperatures and seating arrangements. There was no one to please but myself. I made a pot of coffee, the expensive small batch beans I usually saved for guests, and sat by the window. The city was blanketed in white, a clean slate. I checked my phone. It had been silenced since the night before. There were 42 missed calls and over 100 text messages. I scrolled past the initial rants of "how could you" and "you're a monster" until I reached the ones sent around 2 a.m. The tone had shifted completely. "Isabella, please," one text from Mom read. "We're at the motel. It's clean, but it's not home. Chloe won't stop crying. Jasper blocked her on everything. You were right about him. We were so wrong. Please call us." Another 5 minutes after that, "I keep looking at the empty space under the tree here and realizing that every good thing we had was because you put it there. I'm so sorry." There it was, the regret. It hadn't just taken 5 minutes for the physical cold to set in. It had taken 5 minutes for the reality of their situation to shatter the illusion. Without me to play the supporting character, their lead roles had collapsed. I didn't feel the surge of triumph I expected. Instead, I felt a quiet, steady sense of peace. I wasn't the boring sister or the practical daughter. I was the foundation. And a foundation that isn't respected eventually stops supporting the house. I spent the afternoon at a luxury spa downtown, a last-minute booking I'd made after hanging up on Jasper. As I drifted in the heated eucalyptus pool, I thought about the vibe Mom had been so worried about. The energy in my life felt different now. It was focused inward, preserved for someone who wouldn't throw it away for a visionary in a turtleneck. Before I left the spa, I sent one final message to the group chat. "I've arranged for the property manager to let you back into the cabin for 1 hour to gather your things. After that, the locks will be changed permanently. I'm putting the cabin on the market in the spring. It's time for all of us to find a new place to call home." I put my phone in the locker and walked into the sauna. The story of the reliable Isabella was over. I was starting a new one, and for the first time in 30 years, I was the only one holding the pen. My mom said we weren't celebrating Christmas together this year, and honestly, it was the best gift she had ever given me.